Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and with me today I have a guest who is a candidate for the town board who knows so much about our laws because she also was involved with code enforcement. Her name is Betsy Bambrick. How are you, Betsy?
I'm very well, thanks. Thank you so much for having me here today, Phyllis.
It's my pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
First of all, I am amazed when I hear you talk about how you know all about the laws of this town, which I'm always trying to find out about. So, Betsy, tell us a little bit about you. Where were you born and raised?
Okay, I'm originally from Nassau County, a little town called Belmore. My father was a New York City homicide detective, and my mother would bring us out here summer holidays since I was tiny, and we'd go fishing, and just loved it. And my mother always said when I graduated high school and my father got his 20 years in the force, that she'd buy a house out in East Hampton, and that's exactly what she did. She came out here on her own one day and put a deposit down on a house on Kings Point Road, and we moved out here in '77, and been here ever since.
I live right off Kings Point Road.
Yeah, Clearwater Beach.
Oh, I know.
The house I have now is in Clearwater Beach.
Yes.
So,
yes,
lovely community.
It is a lovely community. I couldn't agree with you. Only problem I have with Clearwater Beach is, it sticks out here, and Montauk is like there. And so when I go somewhere and it takes me a long time to get there, like Stony Brook, I always say, I come from Montauk.
I know.
Because they don't know Clearwater Beach, but they do know. Well,
at the very end, you can't get any further past Fireplace Road, steps from my house, so that Fireplace Beach. So, there's a lot of complaints about, you're 15 minutes out of the village, it takes so long, but that's fine. If you live in Montauk, you got to go over the stretch, and that's 20 minutes.
Besides, we also have Maidstone Park.
Yes. No, it's a gem. The Springs community is very welcoming. I mean, we've lived there the entire time, and I have a place in my heart for Springs.
I couldn't agree with you more. I often have said that when I first came out here looking for a place. Now, I've been out in Suffolk, in Jamesport, and since the 50s. I was going to say,
who's keeping count?
I can't tell you how old I was, but I mean, I knew I was going to be here for a long time, that I wanted to be here. And I had family in Watermill who would afford me wherever I wanted to, going to help me to move out here.
That's
and
nice.
I saw Springs and I said, that's for me.
Yeah.
I loved it. It had that unpretentious look.
Right. Well, that's how the artists all felt when they settled here. So. And
you see kids' bikes and basketball nets, and you say, okay, this is where an educator would be happy.
Yeah.
So, and what did you work at when you were?
When I first got here, I was just a teenager, and the first job I had was at Springs Pizza. Making pizza. I was a pizza girl. I made pizza. I served people, and got to know a lot of the people in the Springs Fire Department back then, because they would, after their meetings, they would always come and hang out there. But as I got a little bit older, I settled into the East Hampton Veterinary Group, and I wanted to work with animals, so I started there. And that's when I met Helena Curtis from Animal Rescue Fund. She was a founder, and she gave me the position of assistant manager when they first opened up the shelter, the ARF shelter, right over there.
Yeah. I know it well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there.
So my heart's always been with animal rescue. That's kind of my thing. And when I was working with ARF, I wanted to get involved with...
A great organization, I might add.
Yeah, perfect for here. I mean, they've done such a wonderful job, and that shelter is gorgeous, and I wanted to get involved in the law enforcement end of animal rescue. Because while it's great to go there and rehome animals that need help, I really wanted to get in on where people were cruel, inhumane, neglectful. I felt we needed to break the chain of that because unless those people get tickets and go to court, they just repeat the same activities over and over again. And we were getting the same litters from people, or the same families would have the same issues again and again. So I took the dog control officer test for civil service, and I got hired in Southampton as a dog control officer. And then when Kathy Lester was a council person, she came to visit me in Southampton to get a tour of the facility and said, Henry Chappie, the old dog warden, was retiring. Would I consider coming to East Hampton? And I said, well, I know all about that, because when I worked at the vet group, I worked very closely with Chappie to rehome dogs. And that's kind of what happened. That's how I got into local town government with animal control.
Wow.
So when I got hired here in East Hampton, it was the title of animal shelter supervisor, because we had agreed it wasn't just going to be a lost and found type of dog warden situation. We were going to enforce laws. So I then joined SPCA as an investigator, got all kinds of good training on how to enforce laws, and then one thing led to another when Bill Wilkinson got elected supervisor, and he had that huge $27 million deficit to plug in. He was looking for managers in town who could do more with less. So he sort of combined animal control under my purview with code enforcement, and they made me the director of code enforcement. And that's how I got involved in local laws.
You were the director of code enforcement?
I was the director of code enforcement, yes. That was my title from 2010 till my retirement in 2017.
Wow, so that's why you know the law so well.
Yeah, I'm kind of a buff. Kind of a nerd that I read up on laws of that nature, but naively maybe I still believe in due diligence and everyone getting their day in court if they're accused of wrongdoing, and if there's a violation, I believe it needs to be investigated. I think complaints need to be heard, and I like to see it through to its end. But now I'm in the private sector, and I'm working with senior citizens at St. Michael's Senior Housing. So still kind of rooting for the underdog here and trying to get everyone their rights and their privileges and whatever entitlements they should be getting. I try to make sure that everyone gets what they're entitled to. But I know you and I had discussions on code enforcement back in the day. When
Yes.
I first came on board, you would discuss complaints with me, because I know the Springs CAC, they used to have a lot of complaints about the Springs community.
Well,
and lack of enforcement.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I mean, there is definitely, as far as Springs is concerned, we are often ignored by the town government. It's like, Springs? Oh, I know that place.
And I'm
It's over
sorry to
there.
say we're back where we were with that. I think we made a little bit of progress when Pat Gunn became the director of code enforcement, and we started turning things around a little bit to get a little bit more meaningful enforcement, especially for Springs. But it looks to me now like Springs has just been kind of ignored again and pushed into the... I mean, there are so many issues confronting the town these days, but
That's for sure.
The Springs community and the housing complaints and the overcrowding and the quality of life issues. We were steering the ship in the right direction, and now I'm sorry to say it looks like we're heading right back for the rocks again, because I don't see any meaningful enforcement in Springs.
I couldn't agree with you more. Not only that, but I keep pushing for that to be a topic of a CAC.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think it is going to come up pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it is too.
But,
I follow the numbers, I follow the stats, and I don't really understand, unless it's just a lack of oversight on the town board's part, why code enforcement has sort of been allowed to drift off into the abyss. I mean, it used to be such a flashpoint for campaigns that everyone was, we want better code enforcement, we're going to get better code enforcement, and now it's, pretty much non-existent. I don't see that there's any real difference in the past 4 years of the quality of life issues. I think that, if anything, they've been compounded. And right now we're facing, actual violent crime in our hamlet that we hadn't seen.
Yes, indeed, that is true. We have had some incidents, the likes of which we have not had before.
Right.
And that is a little...
It's unnerving at best.
To say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter keeps saying, make sure your doors are locked at night, and make sure that you lock your car, and stuff like that,
right.
which...
And, there has to be a connecting of the dots somewhere here, and that if there wasn't so much overcrowding, multifamily houses, it's so saturated there. Everybody's like becoming on top of each other, and if we're not having our eyes on the street, from code enforcement, because I know that a few of those houses got shut down during while I was the director. And, I don't want to say that the police are doing a great job. I have nothing but respect for Chief Sarlo and all of his people. But there needs to be some extra eyes. And I think the community needs to ask, how can we help? How can we help to get on top of this problem? How do we get out ahead of it?
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more.
There was a home invasion with a weapon.
That's right.
And, that when you talk about quality of life, my life and your life would have better quality if we weren't worried about somebody breaking in the door with a weapon. So,
right.
If I am lucky enough and fortunate enough and I get elected to the town board, these kind of situations need to be better addressed, and the enforcement of our laws is the place to start, because the laws are on the books for a reason, and to selectively enforce or to ignore certain situations in certain hamlets, it's just not acceptable.
You can't have almost 700 kids in the spring school without knowing that there's too many families living together in a house. I mean, that is impossible to happen. Well, it's true that our houses are on smaller lots.
Right, the
but
density
they're still half acres,
right.
Most of them. And, it shouldn't be that we have that kind of a population if it wasn't for the fact that there are multiple families.
Right.
Living in houses, and
it was being addressed up to a point, and then I think it's just an uncomfortable truth of what's going on. So everybody just kind of goes, "Oh, let's not put a whole lot of focus on that." And granted, other things come along that sort of take the focus away.
Well,
when Montauk was having, their problems with that summer of mayhem, then all the enforcement goes to that. But I think that if it was better organized and better managed, we could certainly get on top of the problem a little bit more.
Well, that, of course, is one of the things that is the difference between Springs and Montauk. Montauk is more organized.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Springs is not.
Yeah.
And that is a great drawback
Right.
to the community,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have that kind of interest in, and maybe it's because of the overcrowding.
Well, another part of the issue, too, is it takes a lot for working families to then get up and go to a meeting and speak publicly on anything.
You don't
because
have to,
they're
yes.
exhausted. They're working 2-3 jobs to pay the mortgage and to pay the taxes and
to feed and clothe the family.
and to raise the family.
And there they are with their children and making sure the kids do the homework
That's
and how
right.
do you go to a
That's
meeting
right.
at the
And
end of the
I know
workday.
because I've gone to meetings and I get up and it could be a little nerve-wracking, you know, people who aren't used to public speaking. It can be, you know, a little unsettling to get up and you're telling your fears, you're telling your concerns and your worries to people who you've elected to listen to these things and do something about them. And to get up there and say your piece and then have them just go, okay, and they write something in a book. And you know they're not digesting what you've said. They're not really taking into account your feelings about certain situations. And, you know, the working families are not going to be able to just go on Thursday nights or Tuesday mornings and say, this is how I feel about it. And I think the board considers that as, well, then they don't have concerns. Then everything's fine. We're doing a great job because so-and-so didn't get up. And then when somebody does get up and speak, they're made to feel like it's a bit of an imposition, you know. I know that times that I've gotten up, I get the blank stare. And I've seen, you know, for example, in Wainscott, you know, people get up and they talk about the water, you know, the contaminated water at a public hearing. Or they talk about how they don't want the test holes drilled at Beach Lane for the incoming cable.
Oh, God.
And then there's a walk-on resolution immediately following these hearings, which means why even hold the hearing? Anything you've come to say has not been heard. So I think that, and from what I'm hearing on the campaign trail now is, you know, I'm asking people, what are your concerns? What do you want to see addressed? And over and over, it's basically the same thing. We don't feel that we're represented by this sitting board. And we feel that when there's something we have to say, we're ignored. And this board is, well, the majority of this board is answering to other people, you know, with their patronage, with their cronyism. You know, if it weren't for staunch board watchers who are calling them on certain things, it's pretty much a matter of how much are we able to get away with. So, you know, when you talk about the local hardworking people, why are they putting up with these things? I think that they feel that they don't have a choice. But they have a choice now. So
yes.
Get in other people who will listen to them.
Yes, indeed. That is what elections are about.
Absolutely.
Elections are about choosing people who are going to listen to you and act upon the things that you need done.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, and when I say absolutely, they say absolute power corrupts absolutely. When you have a town board that is not only just a majority, but a monopoly, that's a very short road to dictatorship. And the people that are talking to me are saying that that's how they feel. They feel that the town board dictates to them rather than represents them. And, you know, when it comes to...
That is a sorry state.
It really is. And I'm not saying it just because that's part of my platform. I'm saying it because that's the actual reason I'm running. You know, I don't feel that the regular tax-paying person on the street feels that they're being heard or listened to, or their concerns amount to anything, for that matter. You know, the financial state of the town, we keep passing these budgets and raising taxes, spend. And we're not getting the services that were promised. You know, the people on the board now ran their campaigns on, they ran on better code enforcement. They ran it on, we're going to put back some of the services, such as leaf pickup, or opening the landfill another day, you know, because we got rid of all those services to plug the hole in the deficit. And do more with less, do more with less. And now, you know, we seem to have money in the budget. We keep raising the budget, keep raising taxes. Where are the services that were cut off? You know, people need those services.
You know, especially for seniors, that leaf pickup was an absolute blow.
Yeah.
Blow to the gut.
Yeah.
You know, I'm lucky. I have preserve around me, so I can,
Right.
where the leaves come from, and I say
Yeah.
in the fall and in the spring, here you go, leaves, back
Take
to
'em
where
back.
you came from, you know, but other people
Take 'em
don't
back.
have
Yeah.
that.
No, I know.
And that's, I mean, I know that on my property in this particular fall, I had enough leaves along the street to fill a school bus.
Yeah.
And they all went back to the preserve because that's where
Yeah.
they came from.
Right.
And that was what used to be picked up by
Right.
the town.
Right.
And to think that they haven't even tried to do that for senior citizens who don't have the money to hire somebody to come and pick up the leaves and take them to the dump for them. I mean, it's really, I mean, if you run on that alone, return of the leaf pickup.
Well, the people sitting on the board now ran on that, but they didn't make good on their promise. And, you know, it seems, and taking the temperature of the constituency, there's this feeling that the board caters to a different crowd, not to our local hardworking people or our seniors or our young folks wanting affordable housing. It just it seems like that ship has sailed, you know, because we're making deals with billionaires on pieces of property and on commercial establishments, and you know, it's just the overall vibe is, you know, the people who voted them in just aren't. They're not getting their end of the bargain held up at all. So, you know, I hope, if nothing else, just talking about these things will make it uppermost in their mind about, you know, actually representing the people who got them in there. Because right now, it's a very sorry state that people just don't feel that they're represented.
Well, it's a terrible state to be in, to feel that you're not represented with your elected officials.
It's fixable. That's why they have elections.
That's right. That's right. That is why they have elections, is to out with the old stuff, in with the new stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, that doesn't mean that bringing in new means everything has to be bigger and better. It would be nice to recapture some of the old quaint ways we used to have without, you know, we don't need to just build and make everything, you know.
That's what we definitely don't need to do.
We do not need.
Yeah.
We do not
Build,
need.
build is
Yeah.
absolutely, you know, the wrong thing.
Yeah.
What we need to do is to take care of the needs of the people.
Absolutely.
That's the definition of government, by the way. As an old teacher, I will tell you that government is to serve the needs of the people. It's the definition.
Sounds right. I don't know how we lost touch of that. How did that slip away?
Well, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens as, I don't know, as communities and countries don't stay on the right track,
Right.
and you find yourself losing what you once had.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's
Yeah.
really
It's
tough.
tough to get back, too.
Yeah.
It's tough to get back. And, you know, when you talk about losing what you had, you know, when we talk about affordable housing, and you know, I raised up two very fine young adults going through spring school and East Hampton school, and they're, you know, they give back to their communities. They're wonderful people, and they can't afford to live here because there's no jobs for them here and there's no housing for them here. And I'm not the only person who's raised their kids up here who are in that same dilemma. You know, you'd like to keep the family close, but there's no chance that my son is going to be able to. You know, he's getting married in a couple of months. He can't buy a house here. He can't afford anything. Springs used to be the place where you can get a starter home, but you know, that's going by the way of the dinosaur as well. So, you know, I'm not the only one who feels that way, and I don't know that our affordable housing topic has been one that there's been a lot of attention paid to in the past 8 years.
Well, we're going to change that. I know you are.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
coming.
Boy, that flew
I really
by.
appreciate it.
I
Yes.
went on and on.
No, it does. It always does. People always say, "My, that's over. We're over this already. That's so fast." But that's what happens when
Well,
you're
obviously,
doing a
I
show.
don't have the fear of public speaking because I just went up and just yattered on and on. So,
And you did a great job, and I hope that you're going to get elected.
Thank you so
Because we
much.
need your point of view.
thanks so much.
You know, you really do have it, and
Yeah.
we're looking forward to it.
All right, I'll see you on the campaign trail.
Yep.
Thank you.